I never considered myself the type of person to be paranoid. In fact, I always prided myself on being a man who trusted his partner completely. That's how it was with my wife, Emily. We met in college, had the kind of relationship everyone talks about. Open, honest, easy. Or at least, that's what I thought. We had been together for 10 years, married for 5, and I always assumed we had the kind of love that would last a lifetime. But lately, things had started to feel off. I couldn't quite place my finger on it at first. It wasn't anything glaring, but it was there. It was the small things, her reluctance to hold my hand when we walked together, the way she'd glance at her phone and suddenly look away when I walked into the room, the long hours she'd been spending at the office, a place she used to hate. It wasn't like her at all. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but you know how it is. You get a feeling, and it starts to eat away at you. One evening, I decided to surprise her. I'd gotten off work early, and as I pulled into the driveway, I noticed her car wasn't there. She was supposed to be home an hour ago. I told myself she was probably caught up at work, but when I checked my watch, I realized she wasn't just a little late. She was over 2 hours past when she said she'd be back. I did what anyone in my position would do. I tried calling. No answer. Then a text, no response. By this point, the anxiety was creeping in. Maybe she had lost her phone, or maybe she was too busy to reply, right? I mean, she was working on a big project with a tight deadline. I had a million excuses for her, but deep down, the doubt was taking root. Then, just as I was starting to convince myself I was being ridiculous, I heard the sound of the front door opening. Emily stepped inside, smiling at me with a warm greeting, but something was different about her. It wasn't the usual joy in her voice. It felt rehearsed, like she was trying too hard. "You're home early," she said, trying to act casual. "I was about to ask you the same thing," I replied, my voice coming out harsher than I intended. She seemed to stiffen for a moment, but then her smile returned. "I decided to finish up the project tomorrow." "I didn't want to keep you waiting," she said, setting down her bag. "What's wrong?" I could tell she was trying to play it off, but I wasn't buying it. Something wasn't right. My mind raced as I wondered, for the first time in our entire relationship, if she was hiding something from me. The next few days felt like I was walking through fog. Emily seemed unaffected by the subtle changes I noticed in her behavior. She still acted like everything was fine, but the small things kept piling up. She started working later, spending more time on her phone, and was less engaged when we were together. I found myself watching her more than I should, trying to decipher what was happening beneath the surface. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I was just being paranoid. We'd been through rough patches before, but I'd always trusted her. Still, the distance between us grew, and I couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that something wasn't right. I kept asking myself, what if? One evening, after a long day at work, I got home to find her car missing again. She'd promised she'd be back by 7, but it was nearly 9 p.m. I tried calling. No answer. Texting. Silence. At this point, I felt a knot in my stomach. She always responded quickly, so this was unusual. When she finally came home, she acted like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just left me hanging for hours. I wanted to ask her where she'd been, but I didn't. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, but I told myself not to overreact. She was just busy. She always had an excuse. But the next day, I had had enough. The doubt was suffocating me, and I couldn't pretend anymore. I decided to do something I never thought I would. I decided to track her phone. I'd heard about apps that could monitor someone's messages and calls, and I'd dismissed them in the past. But this time, I needed answers. I didn't want to believe the worst, but the signs were too loud to ignore. I set up the app while she was in the shower, trying not to feel guilty. It was a violation, I knew that. But what if I was wrong? What if this was just my mind running wild? I had to find out for sure. The moment she left for her meeting the next day, I checked. I was terrified. And there it was, flirty texts between Emily and a man I didn't recognize. They joked about their time together, planned to meet again. My stomach churned. It wasn't a friend. This was something else. I wanted to scream but kept quiet, staring at the phone, each word feeling like a punch in the gut. The next day, I found more photos of her at a bar, with the same man, standing too close, smiling too comfortably. The evidence was stacking up. But who was he? The next few days felt like I was living in two worlds. On one hand, there was the Emily I thought I knew. Charming, affectionate, still trying to maintain our routine. On the other, There was the woman I was starting to understand was slipping away from me, leaving me to unravel the tangled threads of her life. The texts and photos burned in my mind, but I couldn't confront her yet. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about figuring out who she had become and why I hadn't seen the signs sooner. I started watching her more closely. Small things caught my attention, like the way she'd smile a little too much when talking about her work friends. It wasn't a natural smile, but the kind that looked like she was hiding something. There was a tension in her posture when I was around. She was always a little more careful, a little more distant, almost as if she was preparing for the worst. One evening, when she was getting ready to go out again, she caught me staring at her, my mind swirling with all the questions I hadn't yet asked. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked, her voice light but defensive. I could feel my pulse quicken. I wanted to ask her everything. Who was he? What was going on? But instead, I swallowed hard and shrugged. "Just thinking," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "You look nice. You're really going out again?" She nodded, brushing off my comment like it was nothing, and went to grab her purse. I watched her leave, a sinking feeling in my chest. It was in that moment that I realized I wasn't the only one hiding something. She was too. That night, I did what I had been avoiding. I confronted her. It was late, and we were sitting in the living room, the quiet of the house settling around us. I could feel the weight of the conversation before I even started. "Emily," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "There's something I need to know." She looked at me, her face unreadable. I could see her tense up, but she didn't say a word. "Are you seeing someone?" I finally asked, the question hanging in the air. For a split second, I saw her eyes widen. Then she quickly composed herself, giving me a small, tight-lipped smile. "No, what are you talking about?" "Of course not," she replied, but her voice cracked ever so slightly. I didn't believe her. I couldn't. The days after our conversation were a blur. I could feel the tension between Emily and me growing thicker with every passing moment. Her attempts to act normal felt like a performance, one I wasn't buying. It was like she thought if she just kept playing the part of the loving wife, I wouldn't notice the cracks in her act. But the cracks were there, and I couldn't ignore them. I couldn't look at her without feeling the weight of everything I had discovered, and I could tell she felt it too. She was still spending late nights at work, still glued to her phone, but now there was something different. She seemed more distant than ever, and when she wasn't distracted by her phone, her eyes would wander, like she was lost in thought. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was no longer the center of her world, and I hated it. It all came to a head one night, when she got home later than usual. I'd been sitting in the living room, scrolling through my phone, pretending I wasn't watching the clock. She walked in, and without looking at me, she immediately headed for the kitchen. I could feel the air between us thick with unspoken words. I didn't want to do this, not like this, but I couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Where were you tonight?" I asked, the words coming out before I could stop them. She froze for a second, but then turned to face me, that same tight smile on her face. "Just finishing up some work stuff," she said quickly. "You know how it is." I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my cool. "You're always working. Always busy." I paused, my heart racing. "Is there someone else, Emily?" Her face didn't change at first. She looked at me, her eyes flickering with something unreadable before she finally spoke, her voice softer now. "Why would you think that?" It wasn't the answer I was hoping for, but I didn't expect honesty. "Not now. Not after everything." I took a step toward her, my voice hardening. "Don't lie to me. I know about him. The man you're seeing." Her face went pale. The color drained from her cheeks, and for a split second, I could see the fear in her eyes, the fear that I knew the truth. It was the first crack I had seen in her mask. "Who? Who told you?" she stammered, her hand trembling slightly. I didn't need to answer her question. The silence between us was enough. Her words were like a slap to the face. "It's different with him." I stood there, momentarily paralyzed, trying to grasp what she meant. What did she mean by different? What could be so different that it justified betraying everything we'd shared? Every question in my mind was like a growing knot, tightening with every passing second. I wanted to yell, to demand answers. But instead, I just felt hollow. The woman I thought I knew, the one I'd trusted so completely, was slipping away. I couldn't hold on to the person standing in front of me anymore. "Who is he?" I managed to ask, the words forced out from a place of deep pain. I needed to know. I had to know who this man was, the one who had taken her from me. She hesitated, her eyes flickering with something I couldn't place. You wouldn't understand, she said softly, her voice almost pleading. It's not like that. He's just someone I can talk to. Someone who listens. I never meant for it to happen, but it did. My frustration boiled over. Someone who listens? Is that really what this is about? The more she spoke, the further she pulled away from me. It wasn't just the affair, it was the way she was justifying it. Like it was a small thing, something that didn't matter. But it mattered to me. It mattered to us. I deserve more than this, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I deserve to know who he is. I've been sitting here, trusting you, and you've been lying to me. Who is he, Emily? I watched her struggle, the battle between guilt and defensiveness playing out across her face. For a moment, I thought she might finally tell me the truth. But instead, she dropped her gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't want you to know him, she said, looking at me with wide eyes. It's not like what you think. It's complicated. Complicated, I repeated, my words sharp. This is as uncomplicated as it gets. You've been cheating on me. That's not complicated, that's betrayal. She flinched, but didn't offer any real defense. I'm sorry, she whispered, the apology feeling empty. Sorry, I said, disbelief creeping into my voice. That's all you have to say? Sorry. The anger inside me flared, but more than that, I felt utterly defeated. How had we ended up here? How could she stand there and pretend everything was fine? I took a step forward, my voice steady but full of quiet fury. Tell me his name, Emily. Her eyes shifted, and for a moment, I thought she might just walk away from it all. But then, with a resigned sigh, she gave in. His name is Alex. He's a physics teacher. Alex. My mind immediately spun. A name, a detail, but nothing more. I didn't know who he was, why she'd chosen him. What had she seen in him? What had he given her that I hadn't? Alex. The name echoed in my mind, sharp and unsettling. I had to know more, but Emily's eyes told me that she wasn't ready to reveal everything. She had admitted to the affair, but there was still so much she wasn't saying, something beneath the surface that I couldn't yet see. I wasn't sure if I was more angry or just deeply, painfully confused. I had always trusted her. To see her standing there, looking at me with that mixture of guilt and fear, made me realize just how little I actually knew her anymore. I took a step closer, forcing myself to focus on her words. How long has this been going on? I asked, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. But it slipped through anyway. A few months, she said quietly, avoiding my gaze. I felt the weight of her words sink in like a stone. A few months. She'd been seeing him for months, and I had no idea. It wasn't just the affair that hurt, it was the secrecy, the lies, the hours I had spent beside her, oblivious to everything that was happening behind my back. A few months. I repeated, unable to keep the disbelief out of my voice. You've been doing this for months, and you didn't think to tell me? You didn't think to say anything? Her shoulders slumped, and she let out a shaky breath. I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered. I never meant for it to go this far. I shook my head, the bitterness rising in my chest. You've already hurt me, Emily. You've already destroyed everything we had. Her face crumpled, and she took a step toward me, her eyes pleading. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for any of this. It just happened. I don't know how to explain it. But her words fell flat. The hurt inside me felt too deep, too fresh to be soothed by an apology. She could say she was sorry all she wanted, but it didn't change what she had done. Tell me how this started, I said, trying to focus on getting answers. How did this even begin? She hesitated for a long moment before finally speaking. I met him at work. He's a physics teacher at the high school where I've been volunteering. At first, it was just casual, talking about school. But then it escalated. We spent more time together, and eventually, it became more than that. A physics teacher? That's who she chose? The more I heard, the more the confusion and pain grew. A man she'd met through work, a man she'd spent months with, and never once told me about. I took a slow breath, trying to steady myself. So, you've been hiding this for months, and I never suspected a thing? I didn't know how to tell you, she said, her voice shaky. I was scared of losing you, but I couldn't stop myself. I stared at her, the weight of everything pressing down. The lies, the secrecy, it wasn't just the affair. It was the way she'd kept me in the dark for so long. I could feel my pulse racing as I processed everything Emily had told me. A physics teacher? Alex? The whole thing felt surreal, like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every answer she gave seemed to raise more questions, and no matter how many times I asked, she wasn't offering more than the bare minimum. I needed to know more. I needed the truth, the whole truth, and I wasn't about to stop until I had it. The silence in the room was suffocating as I stood there, staring at her. I had to get a grip. My mind was clouded with a mix of anger, betrayal, and confusion, but more than anything, I felt helpless. This wasn't the woman I thought I married. This wasn't the Emily I'd built a life with. I took a step back, running my hand through my hair. So it just happened? You weren't looking for this, but it just happened? I asked, my voice thick with disbelief. How do you even explain that? You're telling me you met him at work, you started spending more time together, and then suddenly, what? You fell in love? Her eyes shifted, and I saw the discomfort in them. She was clearly struggling, but the longer she hesitated, the more the truth seemed to slip away from her grasp. No, she said softly. I didn't fall in love. It wasn't like that. She took a breath, her face flushed. It was just easier. With him, it felt like I could be myself. Be yourself? I repeated, my voice rising again. What does that even mean? You're telling me that everything we've been through, everything we've shared, that wasn't enough? You needed someone else to listen to you? I didn't mean for it to happen, she repeated, her voice growing more frantic. I swear I didn't. I clenched my fists, trying to control the rage that was bubbling up inside me. You think I don't see what's really happening here? You're not just cheating on me, Emily. You're lying to me. And you've been lying for months. I'm sorry, she said again, almost pleading. But you don't understand. You're not the one I'm with him for. It's just different with him. Her words stung more than I could express. I had always prided myself on understanding her, on being the one who knew her better than anyone. And now she was telling me she needed someone else to give her what I wasn't. I took a step forward. Then tell me everything. Don't hold anything back. How long has it been going on? What did he offer you that I couldn't? She hesitated, biting her lip. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. It started as friendship, but it became more. I didn't mean for it to, but I couldn't stop. He made me feel alive again. Her words hit me like a physical blow. He made me feel alive again. The quiet, almost absent way she said it made it sound like she wasn't confessing to cheating. She was explaining why I wasn't enough for her anymore. I didn't know how to respond. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal. I couldn't even begin to process it. I stood there, my heart pounding in my ears, trying to make sense of everything she had just admitted. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I tried again. What was it, Emily? What did he give you that I couldn't? Was it just someone to talk to? Was it that simple? She didn't look at me. She just stared at her hands, twisting nervously. Her silence was deafening, and I could feel my patience wearing thin. No, she said after a long pause, her voice quieter than before. It wasn't just talking. It's the way I could just be myself with him. I didn't have to pretend. I didn't have to be what you needed. My stomach churned. What I needed? What did that even mean? All this time, I had been right here, trying to be what she needed, trying to build a life with her. And now she was telling me it was never enough. I don't get it, I said, my voice barely more than a whisper, though the words stung. Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you tell me? Why go behind my back? I didn't know how, she replied, almost pleading. You weren't the same. We weren't the same. I didn't know how to fix it. So I just shut down. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was blaming me for this. She never gave me the chance to fix anything. She never told me she was unhappy. Instead, she hid it from me, hid her entire world from me. You shut me out. You pushed me away, and now you're telling me this? I tried to keep my voice steady, but it was shaking with the force of my anger and hurt. So you thought sleeping with him was the answer? Her face twisted with regret, but there was no going back. She had already crossed the line. She had already let someone else into our life. I'm so sorry, she whispered, but the apology felt hollow. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Tell me everything, Emily, I demanded. How far did this go? How long has it been going on? She hesitated. A long, agonizing silence filled the room. Finally, she spoke, her voice small and broken. It went all the way. We slept together. The words slammed into me. My mind was reeling. She slept with him. The confession hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. She slept with him. The reality of it was too much to bear, but I had to keep my focus. The truth was finally out, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. The shattered pieces of everything I thought I knew about Emily, about us, scattered across the floor, but I was still missing something. What had led her to this point? I stood there, motionless, my heart racing, my mind spinning with questions I didn't know how to ask. I couldn't let her off so easily. She owed me more than just fragments of the truth. I needed to know everything, even if it destroyed me. Emily, I began, my voice low and steady, despite the storm inside me. Tell me the whole story. Don't hold anything back. How long has this been going on? Why him? Why Alex? Her face twisted with guilt, and she looked away, unable to meet my eyes. The silence stretched between us, thick with the weight of her secrets. I met him a year ago, she said finally, her voice trembling. At a school event. He's a friend of a friend, and we started talking about teaching. About how hard it was to really connect with students, about how isolated it could feel sometimes. And it just snowballed from there. A year ago, a year that, for me, had felt like any other. But for her, it had been the start of something entirely different. Something I hadn't even noticed. And you didn't think to tell me? You didn't think to bring it up? My voice was starting to break, but I couldn't stop myself. You didn't think I'd noticed that you were disappearing from our life? That you were slipping away from me? I was scared, she admitted, tears filling her eyes now. I didn't know how to tell you I wasn't happy. I didn't know how to explain what I was feeling. My breath hitched in my throat. She wasn't happy. That was the root of everything. The truth was, she had been living with a secret for so long, and I had no idea. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. She had been crying out for help, and I had missed every signal. Did you love him? I asked, barely able to get the words out. I was scared of what the answer might be, but I had to know. She closed her eyes, her face twisting in pain. I don't know. I don't think I ever loved him like I love you. But it wasn't just about love. It was about feeling seen again. Feeling wanted. The word stung. She had felt invisible, unloved, and she had found comfort in the arms of someone else. Someone who made her feel seen. Wanted. That was the part that hurt the most. Her confession hung in the air, suffocating everything around us. Not happy. Those two words echoed over and over in my mind. The reason for everything that had gone wrong, for everything I hadn't seen. I stood frozen, my hands trembling, trying to grasp the enormity of what she had just admitted. Our home, which had once felt like a safe haven, now felt like a foreign place. I was looking at her, but she felt like a stranger. The woman I had shared my life with was slipping away, and in her place stood someone I didn't recognize. I don't know if I can believe you anymore, I said, the words coming out with an edge of finality I hadn't intended. But I couldn't stop myself. How could I trust anything she said after everything? After the lies, the secrecy, the betrayal? The foundation of our life had been shattered, and I couldn't see how to rebuild it. I never wanted to hurt you, she said, her voice desperate as she reached out to me. But I pulled back instinctively, as though her touch might burn me. Her eyes flickered with pain, and for a moment, I saw her guilt, her regret. But you did hurt me, I replied, my voice tight. You didn't just make a mistake, Emily. You've been lying to me, hiding this from me. I've been living in a house of cards, and you let them all fall without a word. Her expression faltered, and she lowered her head. I thought I could fix it. I thought if I just kept it all together, I could somehow make it right. But I couldn't. And now it's too late. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to scream at her, to demand that she fix everything she had broken. But how could she? The trust between us had crumbled, and there was no magic fix for that. You could have told me, Emily, I said, the hurt in my words sharp. You could have said something before this all went too far. Instead, you let it build until it consumed everything. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't know how to say it. I didn't know how to admit it to myself, let alone to you. I shook my head. But you did it anyway. You chose him. You didn't think I'd notice, didn't think I'd feel the distance between us, but I did. You were already gone, Emily. She looked up at me, tears filling her eyes. It wasn't about him being better than you, she said softly. It was just, I lost myself. And when I was with him, it felt like I could breathe again. I wasn't just your wife. I was someone else. Her words cut deeper than anything she had said so far. Someone else. She hadn't been herself with me. All the moments we had shared, all the time we had spent building this life. She had been suffocating in it. The air in the room felt heavier with each word that passed between us. Someone else. That was the phrase that had shattered my world. Emily hadn't just been slipping away from me. She had already walked out the door, leaving me in the wreckage of our life. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the betrayal, the lies, or the fact that I had missed it all. I'd been so wrapped up in us that I didn't see her changing, drifting further and further away. All the nights she worked late, all the times she seemed distant, every little red flag I had ignored because I trusted her, because I believed in us. I gave you everything, I said, the weight of my own words sinking in. And you gave him pieces of you. All the pieces. Emily's eyes flickered with guilt, but she didn't speak. There was nothing she could say to make this better, to take back the damage. I had trusted her with my heart, and she had given it to someone else, someone I didn't even know. I never wanted to hurt you, I swear, she said, her voice trembling. But I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't tell you what I was feeling. It was like we were drifting apart, and I was too scared to face it. Scared, I repeated, barely able to control the tremor in my voice. You were scared, so you decided to have an affair with a man you barely knew? You chose to hide it from me instead of talking to me? She nodded slowly, her eyes full of regret. I didn't know how to talk to you. Every time I tried, it felt like I was drowning and nothing was getting better. He just listened, and that made me feel like I mattered again. A bitter laugh escaped me, and I shook my head. You did matter. You mattered to me. But you didn't see that, did you? You never gave me the chance to fix things. I was already too far gone, she whispered, as though admitting that made it somehow less painful. But that didn't make sense. She hadn't been too far gone. She had made the choice. She had decided that someone else, someone who could be there for her in ways I hadn't, was what she needed. And I had been left behind. I had been blind to it. Tell me something, Emily, I said, forcing the words through the lump in my throat. How long did it take for you to fall for him? Was it the first night? The first conversation? Or was it a slow burn that finally set everything on fire? She recoiled slightly, like she hadn't expected the question, and for a moment, the pain in her eyes was almost unbearable to look at. But the truth needed to come out, and I was done pretending I could handle only part of it. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Her silence was the answer. The silence between us was suffocating. Emily's inability to speak was louder than any confession she could have given. She hadn't just crossed a line with me. She had stepped into a world I couldn't understand. I looked at her, the woman I once knew so well, now a stranger. Her eyes were downcast, full of guilt, but something else lingered there, fear. She was afraid of what she had unleashed, of what I was finally starting to uncover. But there was more to this than just the affair. I could feel it. I could sense it in the air between us. Why Alex? I asked again, my voice quieter now, but the urgency still there. Why him of all people? What made him different? Her eyes darted around the room, as if searching for a way out, a way to avoid this question. It felt like she was going to say something important, but she kept swallowing her words. I wasn't going to let her off that easy. Tell me, Emily. I pressed, my patience worn thin. Was it just because he listened? Or was there more to it? Did you find something in him that you couldn't find in me? She didn't meet my eyes. Her fingers twisted together nervously, and she seemed to shrink in on herself, almost like she was physically trying to disappear from this conversation. She paused, took a breath, and then continued. It wasn't just about him. It was about me, about feeling like I was invisible. In our life, I didn't feel seen anymore. Not by you, not by anyone. My heart sank at her words. Invisible. I had never once considered that. I had always thought we were in sync, that we were a team. But somewhere along the way, I had failed her, and she had turned to someone else to fill the void. I never knew, I said, the frustration bleeding through in my voice. I never knew you felt that way. You were my priority, Emily. I thought you knew that. I didn't, she whispered. I didn't feel it. And when Alex came into my life, he made me feel something again. Not just one I'd seen. The truth stung more than I had imagined. She wasn't just seeking affection. She was seeking validation. She didn't just need another person in her life. She needed someone who could make her feel alive, someone who could make her feel like she mattered. And somewhere along the way, I had failed to see that she was drowning right in front of me. But there was still something I couldn't grasp. I could feel it, there was more. And I couldn't rest until I had every piece. Emily, I said, my voice quiet but firm. What else aren't you telling me? What else is there that I don't know? Her eyes flickered, and for the first time, I saw a flash of panic. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Then, she broke eye contact, her gaze dropping to her hands. Her hesitation was palpable. Emily's body language screamed that she was holding something back, something so dark, so painful that even after everything we'd already talked about, she wasn't ready to let it go. The silence stretched between us like a chasm, thick with the weight of her unspoken truths. I could feel my own heart pounding in my chest, the pressure of waiting for her to finally speak, to give me the last pieces of this shattered puzzle. But each passing second only deepened the knot in my stomach. She wasn't just afraid to face me. She was terrified of what I might do with the truth. And for the first time, I realized that I was terrified too. What if this truth destroyed everything? What if what she was about to tell me was the final nail in the coffin of our relationship? Emily, I said, my voice a little gentler now, though it was still tinged with desperation. Whatever it is, you have to tell me. I need to know. Please. She looked up at me, her eyes brimming with unshed tears, but she didn't speak immediately. Her lips trembled as she gathered her thoughts, clearly weighing her next words, as though deciding how much more damage she was willing to cause. Finally, she let out a shaky breath and whispered, "It wasn't just Alex." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of me. My mind raced, trying to make sense of her confession. What do you mean, not just Alex? Had there been others? Was this some sort of long-term affair? I barely managed to find my voice. What do you mean? Who else, Emily? Her face crumpled in pain, and for the first time, she reached out, grabbing my hands with shaking fingers. It wasn't just him. I don't even know how to explain it. It started with him, yes, but there were other moments, other people. I got lost in it all, in the attention, in the escape, and I didn't know how to stop. My heart seemed to stop. My stomach churned with the realization that she had lied to me on a level deeper than I could have imagined. I had thought Alex was the only one, the one who had taken her from me, but there had been more. There had been others, other betrayals, each one feeding the beast of deception she had built. I pulled my hands away from hers, the anger welling up in me like a tidal wave. How many, Emily? I choked out. How many others? Was it just about him, or was this something that's been happening for longer than I ever realized? Tears slid down her face, her voice breaking as she whispered, I don't know. I lost control. It just kept happening. And every time, I told myself it was the last time. But then, it wasn't. I stood there, stunned, trying to wrap my mind around what she was saying. How long had this been going on? How many lies had she spun? And how many times had I chosen to look away because I couldn't face the truth? The room felt smaller now, the walls pressing in around me as Emily's words reverberated through my mind. Others. She hadn't just been with Alex. There had been other people, too. A web of lies that I couldn't even begin to untangle. Each revelation felt like a new weight being added to my chest, suffocating me. I could hardly breathe. I turned away from her, pacing the room, my mind spiraling. How had I missed this? How had I been so blind to everything that had been happening right in front of me? Every moment we had shared, every laugh, every quiet evening together, felt like a lie now. And worse, she had been the one lying to me all along. I wanted to rage at her, to demand answers for every betrayal. But I didn't know where to start. There were so many things she hadn't said, so many questions that were still unanswered. But one thing was clear. Emily hadn't just drifted away from me. She had plunged into something far darker, something I could never have predicted. I don't know what to do with this, Emily, I said, my voice low, almost breaking. How do we fix something that's broken so completely? How do I even begin to trust you again? She was silent for a long moment, and when I turned to look at her, I saw the pain on her face, the guilt and regret etched in every feature. But that didn't change what had happened. That didn't undo the years of trust she had destroyed in the span of a few months. I don't know how we can fix it either, she whispered, her voice so small, so fragile. But I want to try. I don't want to lose you. I never wanted this. Then why did you let it happen? I asked, my frustration bubbling over. Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you say anything when you started feeling unhappy? We could have worked through it, But you chose to hide from me. You chose to run. Her eyes filled with tears, and she looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I was scared, she said softly. I didn't know how to fix me. I didn't know how to fix us. And by the time I realized I was losing everything, it was too late. The silence between us stretched for what felt like hours. The air was thick with unspoken words, the weight of everything we had lost pressing down on me. I had always believed that love could overcome anything, that if we fought for it, we could rebuild whatever was broken. But now I wasn't so sure. Could we ever rebuild trust? Could I ever look at her the same way again? I stood there, frozen, trying to process it all. The weight of everything we'd lost, everything we could never get back, was crushing. Emily had torn down everything we had built together, piece by piece, and now I had to decide whether I could ever find a way to rebuild, or if this was the end. She was crying now, her sobs quiet and desperate, but they didn't reach me. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her that it would all be okay, but the truth was, I didn't know if it would be. I didn't know if we could survive this. I didn't even know if I could look at her the same way again. I don't know how to fix this, I whispered, more to myself than to her. I don't even know if I can. Her tears fell harder, and she took a step toward me, her hands outstretched as if to beg for forgiveness. Please, don't leave me, she pleaded. I know I've hurt you, but I love you. I want to make things right. Please, don't walk away. The desperation in her voice hit me like a tidal wave. I had never seen her like this before, so vulnerable, so raw. It tore at me, but I wasn't sure if it was enough. I had loved her with everything I had, and she had shattered that love. I wasn't sure I could just forgive her and forget. I wasn't sure that I could ever see her the same way again. I don't know if I can do this, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if I can be the person you need me to be after everything. She sank to her knees, her hands covering her face, her sobs racking her body. Please, I never meant to hurt you. I was lost, and I didn't know how to fix it. I need you. Please don't leave me alone with this. I took a deep breath, my chest tight with the weight of the decision ahead. I loved her, I always had. But love alone wasn't enough. Trust, respect, those things had been shattered, and I didn't know if they could ever be repaired. As I looked down at her, my heart broke. I had to decide whether to walk away from this, leave everything behind and try to move on, or whether I was willing to fight for something that, deep down, I wasn't sure could ever be the same. I stepped back, my mind swirling with every possibility. And then I spoke the words that would change everything. I need time, Emily, I said quietly. I need time to think. And I need to figure out if I can forgive you, if I can forgive myself for letting this happen. She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, waiting. And as I turned to leave the room, I knew that no matter what happened next, nothing would ever be the same. We had reached the point of no return. The future was uncertain, and so was the path I would choose. But in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. Our story, as we had known it, was over. What came next was up to me.